Divine peace and blessings. It is that time of year again, and many of you know what I'm doing. I'm sewing, beading and sewing, trying to get ready for March 4th, 2014. Black Hawk, Voodoo, Maroons, here we come. Well, today I want to talk about Voodoo, and particularly Voodoo in the United States. And to have that conversation, you must also talk about New Orleans or Louisiana Voodoo. You apparently, I'm learning, cannot do enough videos, books, documentaries on Voodoo, and particularly Voodoo in the U.S. We are just not getting the facts, not hearing the facts, or not digesting the facts, and then putting that into our common knowledge and our common practice as it relates to the indigenous African American spiritual traditions here in the U.S. So, in order to have a discussion about Voodoo, for me personally, and even here within my house, there are four main points that I must clarify off the top. Number one would be Voodoo arrived in the United States long before the Haitian Revolution. That's number one. Many people continue to somehow anchor Voodoo in general in the U.S., but also New Orleans and Louisiana Voodoo with Haiti. At one time I would have said out of misinformation, but now I'm beginning to think just out of ignorance, if not the continued bastardization of our tradition. The facts are clear, the evidence is clear that Voodoo was a well-known and established practice here long before the Haitian Revolution. And it would be, when we consider that nearly 2/3 of our enslaved ancestors were of a Bantu origin. That would mean that they were from the regions that we now know as the Congo, Angola, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Gambia, those northwestern coastal African communities. That would have been the original group, if you will, families of enslaved Africans that would have been brought to the U.S. I know some of you would like to assume that some magical Islamic Christian process happened as they crossed the Atlantic, and they forgot who they were, and they forgot where they were from, and they forgot what their practices and the practices of their forefathers and foremothers were. But I know that not to be truthful, not to be factual, and it's just not practical. Now that knowledge would go underground, or be hidden, or not be discussed publicly would be a given, would be a natural given. But to assume that somehow that knowledge was lost, it's really woefully ignorant, if not just, propagandistic, an attempt at bastardization of our knowledge of ourselves and our traditions. So the first group of slaves, or enslaved Africans, I should say, would have been brought here somewhere in the late 1400s, early 1500s, I believe. The Haitian Revolution didn't take place until the mid 1700s, I believe, 1780, 81. Don't quote me on that. But long after, we would have been well established here in the States. So the presence of Voodoo, root work, conjure, number one bullet point existed in the States long before the Haitian Revolution. A second point I would want to bring out is this misunderstanding, if you will, about our amalgamation or mix with other traditions. And naturally, that mix would have been to reinforce survival. The knowledge of African traditions, far be it the practice of African traditions, could have meant death, even as recently as the 19th, the 20th century. So it would have been natural to survival that our traditions would have gone underground and then been masked, which is my preferred word, masked behind other religions. Our religions didn't disappear. Our religions did not become watered down. Our religions were not forgotten. They were masked for survival with other systems. Now, there was some benefit to that. I believe we've gained added power, added knowledge to our spiritual archive, if you will, because of our exposure to other traditions, other cultures. I sort of look at it like learning more than one language. It's great to be able to speak your language. It's even better to be able to speak 2 languages, or 3 languages, or 4 languages, or 5 languages. So as we gained access to other sciences, other systems, other languages, if you will, it was a natural process that we would mix, that we would amalgamate traditions together. Not because those traditions were superior to our own, but for our very survival. In most cases, for our very survival. My third bullet point out of 4 would also be that voodoo, if you will, was not limited to Louisiana, New Orleans and Louisiana. Now, we may know more about New Orleans, Louisiana. I even will go as far as to say New Orleans and Louisiana have always had some level of popularity. This would have been the first truly metropolitan city in the country, around the same time as New York and Pennsylvania, and Philly, but particularly here in the South, this was it. This was the metropolis. This was the cosmopolitan location of the South, if you will. And we've always had international port. So we've always had access to exotic wares, exotic goods, exotic ideals, exotic traditions. But voodoo can be found and was found wherever the African was found. Whether it was in the Carolinas, Virginia, Maryland. In fact, some of the strongest archaeological findings of our continued practice of African religion are actually found in Maryland, the state of Maryland. PG County, Anne Arundel County, some of the oldest findings of markings, signs, symbols left on items that represent our adherence to African-based traditional systems, even along the path of the Underground Railroad. And my 4th bullet point of importance in just opening the topic about voodoo, African American voodoo, Louisiana voodoo, New Orleans voodoo, is that it is a religion. We've been relegated to the realm of paganism and ritualism and folklore, if you will, all in an attempt to bastardize our tradition. But not only bastardize our tradition, but to lower it in value and on the scale of importance in terms of what we consider academically legitimate religious studies. So it is truly and indeed a religion. We do have deities, Loa, gods, goddesses, Orisha. And if I were to add a last minute bullet point, that would be it. The presence of Lawa from the Haitian tradition, the presence of Orisha from the Ifa Yoruba tradition, and the presence of other deity from the Fan, the Akan, the Iwe, the Igbo. All of those deities made their way into the new land, the new world, and survived here in the Deep South among the African enslaved, and existed long before the introduction and therefore reinforcements of the presence of voodoo here in the States by way of the Haitian Revolution. So this is my first video of many, giving thanks to my godmother, Dolores L., on voodoo, New Orleans voodoo, and eventually Obia, hoodoo, conjure, root working that I'm going to do here as a series. So thank you for your continued support, your continued attention to my videos. All is truly and indeed a blessing. Ashe.